Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be part of this clinic. Normally, when Kevin and I speak to groups about rules, it's an audience of officials. So this is a refreshing change, but it's probably a tougher crowd. So we'll have to wait and see how it goes. The first thing that occurred to us when we were putting this together was everyone might not know where to access rules information about our lovely game of football. Here are some resources that could be helpful. What we hope to provide this evening is an overview highlighting the major rule changes that have occurred over the past 2 years where we haven't been playing ball. A comprehensive list of those changes can be found on the Football Canada website. In the absence of football, a review or at least a refresher seems to be appropriate, and I applaud your organization for doing it. At the end of the presentation, there'll be time for questions, and we hope to be able to answer those for you. New rules. Player going to a knee. So this year, anytime a player goes to a knee in possession of the football, the ball is dead. This now includes a player who is fielding a kick ball, making it consistent with a receiver who's catching a pass while on the ground, or a ball carrier who goes to a knee. You will also note that this includes a quarterback or a punter who is fielding a bad snap from center, but still permits the holder on a field goal or convert attempt to retrieve a bad snap and return to the kneeling position. In 2019, the quarterback and the punter were able to go to a knee to field the bad snap, and a kick returner was able to go to a knee to field the kick ball. You can't do that anymore. As soon as you're in possession of the football and you got a knee on the ground, the ball is dead. That is obviously for the safety of the athlete. The next new rule is a change that deals with our illegal participation. Players must play the game on the field between the lines. This rule change removes an existing exception where a kick returner who was fielding a ball while it was in flight could have inadvertently stepped on the sideline or inadvertently stepped out of bounds, come back in and fielded that kick. Well, that is no longer legal. If he touches the sideline, goes out of bounds, comes back in, fields the kick, he'll be penalized for illegal participation. No player can use the out of bounds area to their advantage without penalty. However, it's okay if you get blocked out of bounds, you miss a tackle and go out of bounds, or slide out of bounds on a wet field, you can come back in and take part in the play. This adjustment now gives the quarterback some flexibility once the quarterback was under center. Provided the quarterback removes his or her hands slowly and there's no attempt to draw the defense offside, it is now okay for the quarterback to pull the hands out, to call a different play, make a signal, or move to the shotgun formation, or call a timeout. But the quarterback will be penalized if they move away from the center with a quick motion or attempt to simulate the snap of the football. That's a penalty for illegal procedure. The wedge block is a brand new rule this year, and it's a tactic that everybody wants to be removed from the game. Its presence encourages web busters and subsequent injuries. It's not so much that the blockers are getting injured, but it's the players who are trying to break the wedge that is getting injured. The good news is that we don't see too much of this in the amateur game. And what is different about this is the formation is penalized and it does not require any physical contact. So on a kick play, if the return team puts 3 or more players shoulder to shoulder within 2 yards of each other, ahead of the ball carrier in a formation to block for the ball carrier, that is a wedge block and it is a penalty. And the rule does not apply on short kickoffs. Okay, we're going to have a look at two kickoff situations here. The first is a wedge block. Have a look in the left side of the screen on the return team. You'll see three Edmonton players form a wedge. And as soon as that wedge is formed, it becomes a penalty. That is a penalty right there. And this is just the sideline view of the same play. The second example does not meet the criteria of a wedge block. You're going to see two players go shoulder to shoulder, and you're going to see a third player behind them. That is not a wedge block, and that is not a penalty. It is only a penalty if there are three or more players who form that wedge. So in this situation, that is not a penalty. In passing situations where the ball is thrown across the line of scrimmage, players on the offense cannot block downfield before the pass is caught. This applies to both interior linemen and receivers alike. It's an illegal block and it's a 10-yard penalty. And it's become more prevalent with teams that run schemes that involve zone reads and the run pass option. So key on number 64 here, the right tackle. He's part of a double team initially, but he's going to go to the next level to find a linebacker, and he's going to make a block on the linebacker on this pass play. That is illegal. He makes a block about the same level as the reception, and that is an illegal block. Before we get to the next slide, let me remind everyone that at no time can you legally hit a player in the head or use the head as a weapon. That rule is not new, but it bears repeating and has been in place for decades. We have to get headshots out of the game. This is a list of penalties that are classified as unnecessary roughness penalties. An additive foul of 15 yards and an automatic first down in most instances when the defense commits the foul. Most of these penalties are safety oriented and address special situations where athletes are vulnerable to injury. We're going to spend a few minutes on those that are underlined. There have been significant changes to these particular rules over the past 2 years. Hands to the face. This rule applies to both the offense and defense, and we mostly see this foul along the line of scrimmage. The situations where brief incidental contact occurs are not to be penalized. It is a penalty when the contact is forceful, prolonged, or the player gains leverage using the head. It is not a penalty if the hands hit the chest and ride up and make incidental contact with the face. I'm going to show you 3 instances here. The first example illustrates brief and incidental contact to the head by number 67, the left tackle. That would not be considered a penalty. The next 2 examples are penalties, but committed by the defense. Watch the head of the offensive tackle in each case. The head goes back. That is a penalty. This one, have a look at 56 on the left. Watch his head. That is a penalty and is a 15-yard penalty for hands to the face. Everyone's familiar with a horse collar tackle. It's a dangerous way to tackle, and the rule has been refined to reflect that. If the tackler's hand grabs inside the collar of the jersey or shoulder harness, a penalty will automatically be called, just like grabbing the face mask. However, if the grab is high on the jersey and accompanied by a pulling action, a penalty will also be called. So if you grab the jersey up around the nameplate at the back and you pull the ball carrier in another direction and pull them down, that penalty is going to be called. Watch the tackle at the end of this play. This play takes a while to develop. You'll note the tackler's hand grabs inside the collar of the ball carrier's jersey. It's quick. However, it meets the aforementioned criteria and is a penalty. Here it comes right here. Let's talk about the dreaded blindside block. The days of ear holing or blowing up players and everybody jumping for joy on the bench because of that great hit, those days are done. You cannot blow up an unsuspecting player. This is called a blindside block now. So the three criteria are: the player is moving, the player making the block is moving towards or parallel to their dead ball line or goal line, same thing, and cannot deliver a forcible block. And you're going to ask what the definition of forcible is. If you look up forcible in the dictionary, the first word is violent. So think about that. But it's a violent block. So have a look here. The Hamilton receiver meets all the criteria. He's moving towards or parallel to his dead ball line and delivers a forcible block. This is a penalty. We're going to see this a few times. Coaches, coach your players to block in the direction that the offense is going. Real simple concept. In this one, you're going to see an open field block on this screen pass. And it's a block that really didn't need to be made because the ball carrier was gone. But the player who makes the block is moving parallel to a dead ball line and delivers an illegal blindside block. It could also be deemed unnecessary roughness using the defenseless player criteria. Have a look at the wide receiver at the top of the screen, right at the 40-yard line, and follow him along through this play. Now the ball carrier is gone. He's gone up the sideline. And there's the illegal blindside block. There was no need to make that block. That player wasn't going to catch that ball carrier. But that cost him 15, that would have cost him 15 yards and brought that touchdown back probably. unless that one player was going to catch him. But that was a blindside block. Okay, watch the Calgary slot back at the bottom of the screen. The slot's not only guilty of making a great pick on the play, but it's a blindside block. He's moving parallel to his dead ball line and delivers a forcible block. Okay. The definition of the close line play area has changed this year. What we know as the box now extends laterally from the tight end position to the tight end position and is 4 yards in depth, 2 yards on each side of the line of scrimmage. A player situated in the box should expect to be contacted from any direction, with one exception that we'll get into in a moment. Here's another look at the close line play area, defined as tight end to tight end, 2 yards either side of the line of scrimmage. As we know, a block from the rear is illegal, everywhere on the field. However, a player may be contacted from the rear in the close line play area, provided the block is made above the waist. In 2019 and prior, you could do basically anything in that box. You could even block from the rear below the waist. You cannot do that anymore in the box. You can no longer, what we call, clip inside the box. You can block from the rear as long as it's above the waist in the box, but you can't go low anymore from the rear. Okay, blocking below the waist. This rule came in 2019, but bears repeating as it has undergone some refinements. It also requires significant explanation because it's quite confusing, unfortunately. Generally, it's illegal to block below the waist anywhere on the field, except in the block below the waist zone. And we'll get into that in a minute. The next slide provides the dimensions of that zone. The rule applies to both offensive and defensive players. This clearly has implications for the way coaches teach blocking and block destruction. The low block must occur in the zone by a player positioned there at the snap. If a defensive player outside the zone enters the zone after the snap, they may be blocked low. In order to block low, an offensive player in motion must get into the zone and stop before the ball is snapped. And contact must be made above the knee targeting the thigh. I repeat, the blocking below the waist rule now requires that the block be made above the knee and below the waist. So you got to target the thigh. We'll try and clarify that for you. You have a look at the defensive end on the left side. He is inside the block below the waist zone because he is on the outside shoulder of the tight end position. So he can block low and he can be blocked low. If he moves further into the block below the waist zone, number 7 can go low on him. The offensive lineman can go low on him. Move your eyes to the right side of the defensive formation and have a look at the defensive end and the linebacker. Both of them are outside of the block below the waist zone. In their current position at the snap of the ball, if they are still there at the snap, they cannot block below the waist. However, after the snap, if they enter the block below the waist zone, They can be blocked. However, they cannot go low. They cannot block low. Have a look at the linebacker in the middle of the screen. Should that player step into the gap between the tackles before the snap, he would be considered to be in the zone, in the block below the waist zone. This would allow him to be blocked below the waist or blocked below the waist. If he enters the zone after the snap, he may be blocked low, but only by an offensive player positioned in the zone at the start of the play. So the block below the waist zone extends from the tight end position to the tight end position, 2 yards in advance of the football, all the way back to the position of the normal position of the running back or a punter in the punt formation. And I'm sure there'll be questions during the Q&A about that afterwards. Okay, if you have a look here, slot back number 23 is in the zone. The end, number 88, is not. Had 23 been outside this zone and entered the zone, he would have had to have stopped prior to the snap for the block to be legal. The player that he's going to block is not in the zone at the snap of the ball. However, he enters the zone and he can be blocked low. That is a legal block by number 23. Watch the up back blocking on this punt. The block is below the knee, making it illegal. Players must target the thigh area for this to be a legal block. Our next clip is going to show a player who enters the blocking below the waist zone, but that does not come to a full stop before the ball is snapped. This makes the block illegal, and it is a penalty. Watch him come in. Number 12. The final clip illustrates a legal low block where contact is clearly made above the knee. While we normally associate blocking with the offense, this rule also applies to the defense. Watch number 33 take on the lead blocker by going low. Defensive players outside the block below the waist zone at the snap may not block low even if they move into the blocking below the waist zone area. This block is illegal because 33 was not positioned in the zone at the snap. Watch the Hamilton linebacker cut the pulling BC tackle. The tactic of blowing up lead blockers by cutting them has to disappear. The lineman was injured as a result of this illegal block. This is a penalty because number 11 was not in the block below the waist zone at the snap, and the block occurred outside of that zone as well. So again, blocking below the waist applies to both the offense and the defense. Our final unnecessary roughness situation involves an expanded definition of the crackback block. Essentially, A player cannot come from outside the block below the waist area, which is identified by the rectangle, and deliver a low or forceful block on a defender. That area is expanded at the snap of the ball and is identified by the other yellow lines 5 yards in advance of the line of scrimmage, all the way back to the offense's dead ball line. So to review, a player cannot come in on the outside, come in from the outside and go low on someone. That's always been the rule. But you can no longer make a forcible block in that zone either. So where we see this happening a lot is a wide receiver or a tight end will waggle down the line and they will blow up the defensive end or a linebacker who's playing tight within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. You cannot do that anymore. Set a pick on him, push him, but don't blow that player up anymore if you're trying to seal that end and coming in from the outside. So have a look at the slot back at the bottom of the screen. He starts well outside of the blocking below the waist zone. He moves into the zone and blocks low. This is a penalty and is called a crackback block. Now, even if that player remained high and delivered a forcible block on that player, under the new rule, that would also be deemed a crackback block. In this next one, have a look at the inside receiver, number 87, to the right of the formation. He meets all the criteria for a crackback block. He moves from an outside position into the zone and delivers a forcible block. And as I said, frequently receivers will waggle down the line of scrimmage and deliver big blocks on the defensive end or linebacker. You got to recognize that now these are illegal. And on this play, watch the player at the bottom of the screen. He's guilty of unnecessary roughness for two reasons. The block he makes meets the criteria of a crackback, but also as a block from the rear. Both are 15-yard penalties. Okay, that's the end of the presentation. Thanks for your attention. Coaches, there's our email addresses if you want to write them down. Feel free to do so. Any questions you may have, feel free to contact us. We're more than happy. If you want us to arrange an official to come out to your practices, we'd be more than happy to do that too.